Hi, I'm Kayla the BookTube Turtle, and today I am doing an author interview. So a few weeks ago, I did an interview with author Haley Kleinman, and I'm going to show that to you all today. And I will put all the links in the description for where you can buy the book, information, all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, let's just get into it. Hi everyone watching this. I'm Kayla, and I'm here today with author Haley Kleinman, who is the author of A World of Shadows, which came out on April 30th, and today we're going to talk about it. So I guess to start us off, tell us a little bit about you and your book.
Right. Hi, I'm Haley, and I started writing A World of Shadows when I was 12 years old, actually. And the interesting thing is that I didn't actually go into it with the intention of writing a book. It was simply me writing a scene, and then from there, I had more ideas about how to make it a longer story. I did always know that I liked reading and I loved writing, but I never actually thought that I would be a writer. So this was an interesting turn of events. It was just one random day when we were having a field trip. And all of a sudden, I had this vision, and it was actually a scene that ended up being in the middle of my book. I just had this idea, and I felt the need to write it down. So, this book was originally written on the Notes app in my phone. And from there, it just kind of progressed. I eventually moved it to Docs. And as I got older, I got to make this story more sophisticated, of course. It went through a lot of changes, but I found that it was always a good change. And as I got more inspiration, the story kind of got more defined. But the characters, I knew the characters from the moment I started writing the book down. So they're probably the thing that stayed the same.
I love that. That's like really similar to my book. Like, I also got the initial idea and I typed it on my notes app.
Yeah.
So that's really funny. Um, so yeah, so the book has been out for like 2 weeks now, tomorrow, I think.
Yeah, about 2 weeks.
So like how has that been so far? Like having your book like out in the world?
It's been crazy. I mean, on the one side, I was so nervous because it feels so personal, like, people seeing the
Yeah.
things you're writing, because obviously like, these characters were so close to me for a very long time. I'm now 16, so it's been a while. I was incredibly nervous. But on the other hand, I was excited because, seeing the book actually there on the shelf, being able to like look at it and just, it was just something I always hoped for when I was younger. So
Mhm.
I was very proud, and it's been pretty cool. I mean, a lot of my friends have bought it. They've been very supportive. I got to talk to old teachers who inspired me, and they were so happy to hear that I continued working on it as well. And it's been pretty great so far. I've had some friends read it and they really loved it, which made me really happy because my goal was for it to connect with at least one person, and that was enough for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was very exciting, and my friends are all they actually threw me a surprise party the night that it
Aw.
dropped. It was so sweet and I didn't expect it at all. They did a really good job making it a surprise. I had no idea. So
Oh, that's
that was
awesome.
very kind as well. Yeah.
Do you have like a physical copy of the book now? Because I know like
I
it was a while
do.
before you got one, right? Because I know you
Yes,
were
I
like posting
have.
stuff on TikTok and you were like, I don't have a copy yet.
No, it was the funniest thing because when I published it, author copies don't come prime. So I was like, okay,
Yeah.
basically I have to wait 2 weeks and everybody can have one before me. So what I tried to do was order it as a guest before anyone else. And I did make the first order, but somehow people who ordered it after me got it before me. So I'm like, I don't know how that happened, but it did. And it was just funny seeing other people like holding it when I didn't even have a copy myself yet, besides the proof. But today my author
Yeah.
copies actually came. So I have a stack of them over there, and then this is my copy right here. And so that was just a funny thing that was happening.
So you kind of maybe already talked about this a little bit, but what was like the inspiration for the idea and like why was this the book that you wanted to write?
At the time, I kind of only watched one thing, and it was like DC and Marvel kind of shows. And I just loved superheroes, which I know is a little cliche, but I mean, it was just something that made me so happy because I had a hard time fitting in when I was younger. And a lot of time those kind of shows were my escape. And it just kind of that and reading just made me feel really happy and fulfilled in a way that I hadn't really felt in other aspects. So I got really passionate, like when I was watching things like The Flash or, The Arrow, things like that. I just loved those kind of characters. Because that could never happen in real life, but I liked to imagine that. And I would say the other thing that motivated me was the fact that I didn't see myself represented very well in books. I never really saw a Latina main character ever. If they were there, they were a side character, or they were like some acquaintance that was there. And a lot of I actually didn't really even know about the dystopian genre when I first went into this. I think only later did I read Hunger Games. That was my first one. And so I realized, oh, okay, this is how I can make that story in book format, because I was thinking, how can a superhero exist, in a way that isn't film? And then through a dystopia, I saw that was a way to make that possible. And like I said, I instantly knew my main character, Alexis. I instantly knew who she was. When I saw that vision of her, I knew her as if she was me. It was the characters were very much a motivator for me. And her story, it just became like I could not stop thinking about her, because I just knew that I wanted to tell her story. And I gave her uh, um, some of my experiences to make her more real. And I kind of let us share a few qualities. I don't know. I kind of think that if you give every character one piece of you, that makes them real, because you understand them more and they're people. And that's what I try to do with everyone, like Kai, who's another main character. All those characters, I gave them something that mattered to me so that they became people. And yeah, I mean, I would say that although a lot of dystopias do follow a teenager, and I like the idea of having a teenage superhero, since that wasn't a thing when I was watching those shows. It's all adults.
Yeah.
And it's very fun to watch. But then I was thinking, what would happen if it's someone my age who's going through other problems, still finding their identity, still trying to figure out who they want to be in the world. Yeah, that was something I wanted to see too. And I know a lot of dystopias do follow a teenager for that reason. They want to explore that as well. But I just wanted to have that representation that I didn't see for myself in literature.
Yeah. And that's definitely like what you said about knowing your character so well and not being able to get them out of your head is like the best thing ever because then you just want to like
Yes.
spend all your time with your story
Yes.
before you get to like
That's
that
feeling.
point of like I actually hate everything. I don't know if
No,
you had
yeah,
that at
and
all.
that definitely comes. That
Yeah.
comes. That,
It's
but
like
that
you
first
hit that
draft.
wall and you're like maybe this whole thing is actually garbage.
No, yeah, yes, but that one moment where you're just floating because you have this vision and
Yeah.
you're so inspired. It's like that
Yes,
first
yeah.
draft moment where you're like, all these ideas are so good, like I can't wait. But then the editing is like a little kick in the butt, but
Yeah. But then it's like
later.
you like eventually realize like okay, it's because I've spent every waking moment with this story. So I'm like
Yes.
and once you take a step back, it's like okay, no, it's still good. I'm just tired
Yeah.
of it.
You get desensitized to it in a way.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me eventually. Like you just read it so many times and you've read it more than
Yes.
anyone. And you forget that like other people haven't read it though. Like they're not going to be feeling
Yeah.
the way you feel when you look at it. And so I got to a point where I was like, is this even good? Like I read it so much and I was like, I don't even have a sense of what this is like anymore. And then
Yeah.
I was like, well, that's because first of all, I wrote it, so I'm super hypercritical of myself, but also
Yeah.
I've read it a million times.
And like you know what you want it to be like based on what you have in your head. And like it's not
Mhm.
really possible to 100% translate that onto the page,
Yes,
but
yeah,
other people don't know that. They only see what you
right.
wrote. So like that was like a huge thing that I had to learn.
Oh
And
yeah.
like because like my second book in my series, I hated it by the time I was done and like published it and stuff. I was like, I cannot stand this book anymore. But then I recently read it because I was like, I'm working on book three, so I was like, I need to like check for like
Yeah.
any inconsistencies against like what's already been published. And I was like, wow, book two is really good. But
Yeah.
it had been so long since I had like interacted with it in any way. So I was like, okay,
Right.
it's not terrible.
I think yeah, time is important, I think. Like I think
Yeah.
I like right now I could not I'm not gonna like be able to read it because I've just so much in the span of this time, but I feel like I know that when I go back, like maybe a year later, I'll
Hmm.
really like it because it was something that mattered to me so much. And I know that it's a good story. People are liking it. People are telling me they like it. And my friends who I'm friends with a ton of readers and writers at my school. And I'm like, that was also scary for me. The fact that they're all good at reading and writing and all that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, if these people like it, I know that it's real. And then I have this friend who's read like I think 70 books just over a summer, and she read it. And I was nervous when she read it because I was like, oh no, but she ended up really loving it. And she's like, wow, this is such a like a really good depiction of what teenagers are actually like. And I love the pacing. And she's not really capable of lying about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
If she doesn't like a book, she can't finish it. So I'm like, I'm really happy that made me feel like it was like confirmation that,
Yeah.
it was worth telling.
Yeah, and I feel like that adds like an element of realism to the book, like the fact that you are still a teenager yourself, like
Yeah.
writing teenagers. Um,
Yes.
but like one of the questions I had is like how did you decide that you wanted to publish while you were still in high school instead of waiting?
I mean, I think that when I started writing this, like when I decided, okay, this could be a bigger story, I told my teacher, and then she said something to me that stuck with me through every time I wanted to give up, which that did happen, of course, because
Yeah.
it's difficult. And she told me that she'd be the first person to buy my book. She had no doubt that I would do it. She didn't have any hesitation. She just said that she was going to be the first to buy it. And the fact that she had confidence in me even then, that mattered to me so much. And I just kept going. And I set this goal for myself. I had this idea that I would publish it by the time I was in high school. I didn't know when. I was guessing maybe 16, which ended up being accurate. I gave myself a long time because I wasn't necessarily a fast writer and I was very
Yeah.
busy. So I was like, this is going to be difficult to do. But I think if I really commit to it, I can finish it by the time I'm 16, like publish it. And I didn't know about traditional and self-publishing. I didn't
Mhm.
really know about that then. So I just knew like I can see this in my head. And when I was thinking about it, I was saying if I could see this like a movie in my head and it feels the way that it does, there's a chance that it might feel that way for someone else. So I was thinking if this matters so much to me, it could matter. And I better continue this. It was kind of my mindset. And I
Yeah.
ended up fulfilling that goal, publishing it at 16.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because I know a lot of times people are like, "Oh, don't publish like when you're young or whatever." But I really
Yeah.
think it's more like, well, if you have a story to tell and you know how to tell it, like you should do what's good for you, you know? Because
Yes.
even
I
like
don't like it. Yeah.
people like because I
Sorry.
published when I was in college and people were like,
Right.
I saw stuff like, oh, that's kind of too soon. I'm like, but this is the story I want to tell and I want to tell it now.
That's so valid. It's like I don't like when people try to like talk down to younger writers to try to tell them like,
Yeah.
oh, you shouldn't do this yet, like try to scare them off because I think it's important for people to tell the stories they want to tell. Like if it matters so much to them, it'll matter to someone else. And I it's really encouraging to see a whole lot of other young writers like
Yeah.
pursuing their goals. I only ever considered self-publishing for this one because I knew it was a story that meant a lot to me and I wanted to have full control over it for this one. And so
Yeah.
that's something for other like teen writers or any other young writers, whatever age, to consider is if you have something that's really dear to you, don't be like discouraged by what other people are saying, like it's too early. If it matters, it's not too early, you know?
Yeah. And I think having like the self-published option helps a lot with that because most of the time
Yeah.
agents aren't going to look at like writers that are like super young. Um,
Yeah. There's that too.
yeah. And I feel like, but like a lot of young writers write really well and like write really good stories. Like this was honestly one of my favorite projects I've ever worked on.
Thank
Like I
you.
just had so much fun with it and it was so well written. Um, and yeah, I think just like what we've been saying, you know, if you have a story to tell and you're like willing to put in the work that it takes to get it there, then like you should just
Yeah.
go for it.
And I do think you made a good point of like a lot of agents, if they see that you're maybe 16 or if you actually are honest about your age, they might immediately write you off. I think that
Hmm.
does happen a lot to people who are younger, just in general. They don't really get taken very seriously. And people just kind of make the assumption because you're young, like you don't exactly know what you're doing. But especially in a story where the teenager is the lead and it's written by a teenager, you know what that's like more than anyone. It's gonna be
Yeah.
accurate because you're going through the same things. Like
Yeah,
I
like
would
as
argue
you're
that
writing
almost
it.
makes you stronger. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so kind of getting into like the process of writing the book. What were like some of your favorite parts of the process?
The best part is when you have like that vision and you're just writing as fast as you can without having to think about going back. And editing, it's probably messy, but you just feel so inspired while you're doing it. That was my favorite, like that first draft part where I'm
Yeah.
just trying to getting all these visions out on the page. That was like the most freeing thing was doing that.
Yeah,
And
and
that
you
was the
don't
part that I liked the most.
yeah, and you don't really have that like pressure yet of like, oh, people are gonna read this one day, as much as you do when you're
Yeah,
like
exactly. It's
in
like
the
it's just for
editing
you at that
stages.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was your least favorite part, or like what did you have the most trouble with?
Part that was hardest for me was those months that were like just the editing months. Not actually the second draft, but everything after that. Because second draft, I have so many ideas. I'm like, okay, I know what's bad and what's good because there's some parts that I wrote when I was younger. I'm like, okay, obviously this needs to be cleaned up, but I know how to clean it up. Like I know how to fix it. And all my ideas were more defined for the second draft. First draft was like me telling myself the story. Second draft
Yeah.
is okay, let me fix this so it makes sense to someone else. But then everything after that, like the more medium-sized edits, like just sections to change, like words, like every little meticulous kind of edit was very difficult. Like for me, it just kind of because I had to reread my book over and over again to do that. And every time I read it, I was like I don't know. It just it kind of made me lose that feeling of passion that I had in the
Mhm.
beginning because I had to scrutinize it now and I have to kind of look at it with a different pair of eyes. Like I'm trying to criticize it now to make sure it's good.
Yeah.
And that part was really difficult. There were a lot of times where I just got so tired of looking at it. I got really tired of reading it. And that's when I started to have those doubts that you were talking about. Like, is this even good? Like I don't like I'm not enjoying this anymore. And it's a discouraging feeling. Yeah, I had that for quite a bit of time during the editing stage. And that editing stage, it took me longer than the writing part of it. It was it was one of the hardest things I've done. I was like, wow, okay. This process is hard, but I'm learning. I'm learning.
Yeah.
That was
No, it's a
difficult.
lot. That's where I'm at with my third book in the series right now, and I'm dying every day.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
What are like some of your plans moving forward? Like what are you like what I guess what do you plan to work on from here?
I started a new project. I'm trying out a new genre. It's kind of like realistic fiction, queer romance. I wanted to try out something new because I realized I've only ever been, writing in this genre for like 4 years. Let
Yeah.
me step out of my comfort zone and try something else. And I had the same thing I talked about with this one. I had a vision. I saw two characters and they were just so vibrant in my head. And I'm like, okay, I feel like when you have that moment, when you see it in your head and you have that feeling and you know it's a story you need to tell, that's a good sign and that's how you know.
Yeah.
And I had one of those again. I hadn't really had it for a while when I was writing the book because that was all that I could think about. I'm not very good at writing multiple stories at
Me
once
either. I used to try
because
to
it
do
just,
that when I was like a lot younger and I would never finish
yeah,
anything.
right. Like it's too hard because when you have that story that's so important, it takes over everything. And I feel like if you don't like commit all your focus to it and give it the justice it deserves, it's just not going to be as good as it could be. So I waited to pursue other projects until after, but I'm about 80 pages into this new one and I really like it. It's yeah, I'm getting to learn how to write in a style that I haven't necessarily done a lot of, but I like it because it's challenging me and I can feel the life in the characters and I can tell this is a story worth telling. But I'm in that exciting part right now where everything feels
Yeah.
new and I'm trying to put that vision down. So I'm really excited about this one. I might consider writing a sequel for this next one. I think I do plan to write a sequel for World of Shadows, but after this one, I want to take a small break,
Yeah.
right? Try this out and then come back to it because I think in order for that sequel to be really good, I need to do that. That's a decision I
Yeah.
know I need to make. And I'd rather write a really good sequel than try to crank it out right now and it not be what it could be. So yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like that's another really great thing about self-publishing is because you can kind of make your own timeline
Right. Yeah.
and like you're not under like these strict deadlines or where it's like you have to you're like locked into a certain contract or anything like that.
Yeah.
Because I know like the book I'm working on now has been taking a lot longer than I thought it was going to. But
Yeah.
I also like what you said, I have to keep reminding myself like we don't need to rush through it. We just want it to be good, even if it
Exactly.
takes a little longer.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And
But yeah,
I really do love that freedom.
yeah, and that's exciting that you're, working on something new that's like, a different genre and just a completely different situation. I'm excited to eventually do that myself when I'm
Yeah.
done with my current series. I'm like in too deep now, so I'm just gonna like finish it out and then I'll move
True,
on.
yeah. At that point, yes.
But yeah, I love those moments where you just see it so clearly in your head.
Yeah, I
And you're
think
just
that's
like,
the
oh,
best
this is gonna
part.
be great. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's the best part about being a writer is because you can always tell if something's worth sharing, you know it. You know what ideas aren't good and you know what is good because you can tell by the way you feel about it. Like I've certainly written stories that I'm like, okay, I didn't have any kind of like cool moment about it. It feels fine, but I know it's not at that point where it's great. And there are stories where I have that feeling and you just kind of it's like a gut feeling. You just know you know what's gonna be good. And it's always nice to follow those instincts. And it's kind of something you don't or at least I don't get when I'm dancing, which I also do competitive dance. It's not always a feeling I get there. I feel like it's something unique to writing. Um, and yeah, I mean that's it's something you can't really find anything else. I think that's one of the most special parts about being a writer is that you are truly creating a story from scratch. You are
Yeah.
making a whole new world entirely, and you have so much power, and in the sense you have a lot of pressure to do it well and to do it right. But then again, you also have this feeling that's guiding you. Like you kind of know it might be
Hmm.
scary, but deep down you know how to do it right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that also comes with like I know for me, I have written a lot of stuff in my series that didn't actually make it into the published books because I knew that it didn't need to be there, but I was like holding on so tightly. And I was like, but I
Yeah,
really love this scene. I was like, we have to let it go.
yeah,
Because you do just have
yeah.
that instinct of like, this isn't working.
Exactly. Yeah. I had some scenes that I wrote like I always write chronologically because for me it doesn't
Hmm.
work to do. I know
Me
some people do that,
too.
but I can't do
Can't
that.
do it either.
So there were times when I tried to jump ahead and I wrote a scene and I was like, oh, this is great. But then when I actually was writing chronologically and got there, I was like, okay, that does not make sense for the characters and I like it, but this is not gonna make any sense. It's like totally not like in line with the story. That's why I
Yeah.
can't jump ahead. I need to just do it as I go because I find a lot of time like um new things will come out as I'm writing it that I didn't anticipate and
Hmm.
that'll make sense to the story. And I'm like, okay, this needs to stay then. And even if it changes the trajectory a little, it's for the better. And I have to let go of that thing I was thinking about for later just because it's not going to make sense anymore.
Yeah. I don't know if we've actually talked about this before, like when we've talked other times, but do you outline your stories or you just kind of go for it?
For that first draft, I don't think I really even knew what an outline was. So
Yeah.
I
Well, I
just
mean,
kind
like
of
you
threw
were
it out there.
12, so I mean, like
Yeah,
I
so
was
I was
also not outlining at 12.
yeah, it was yeah, I just kind of like went with my gut on that first draft and then I was like, okay, this makes no sense. I need to do some kind of outlining. And so I've never been a fan of like really dense outlining. That doesn't work for me because whenever I end up writing it, I stray from the outline because it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense with the trajectory. Like I get a feeling as I'm going of what needs to happen. And that's kind of the freedom that I enjoy as I'm writing because my best ideas come when I didn't, you know, plan something to happen. So what I started doing was in order to keep pacing good because I don't like slow paced things. And one thing
Me
I wanted for my
either.
book was it to never have fillers. I didn't want any kind of filler chapters. Everything needed to be either revealing character, advancing the plot, or doing something interesting, especially because this is, you know, for a YA audience. A lot of people don't have patience, including me. So I'm like, let me make this
Yeah.
good pace. My outline kind of ended up being me setting a purpose for each chapter. What did I want to accomplish with it? So if there was a chapter I had that didn't have a purpose, it was gone, and I needed to replace it with something else. And I also kept in mind character arcs, how I wanted my characters to change, and that helped me develop the story. And I did write down key events that I wanted to happen. I kept in mind ideas for climax and all of that. But in terms of outlining each chapter, I tried that actually because, and again, how would I know what my favorite outlining style is if I didn't try
Yeah.
it? But every time I did that, it felt restricting, and I ended up
Hmm.
diverging from the outline, like I said, because I was like, oh wait, I thought of something better. It's more interesting. So I stopped with trying to like really micromanage the events that are happening and instead ended up forcing myself to pick a purpose and to kind of
Yeah.
force myself to propel the story in a way that would give me freedom, but also keep me on track and keep the story like lively and interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome that you like kind of came up with that on your own? Because like that's how I coach my clients how to outline is to
That's
do that. Because a lot of
awesome.
times people are like, I don't like outlines. And I'm like, this isn't really an outline. It's like you think
Yeah.
about the scenes that you have and like, do they all have a purpose? How are they all going to flow together?
Yes. Yeah. I feel like people don't really like realize that's outlining, but it is because
Yeah.
outlining is just having an intention for what you're doing. And you
Yeah.
do
And
need an
like,
intention, but it doesn't looks different.
yeah. And like, you just got to like find the thing that works for you. Because a lot of people, like some people really like detailed outlines, even if they like stray from that, they like having that up front. And then some people
Yes.
like having,
Yeah.
kind of a basic outline that doesn't go too much in
Right.
detail. So it's just kind of like playing around and
Yeah.
finding what works for you and realizing
Exactly.
that if you don't want a super dense outline, you don't have to. Like you can have,
Right.
an
Exactly. You have
outline
that
that's more
freedom.
like bare bones of the story.
That's definitely what mine looks like. I
Yeah.
found that I was not big on that, and yeah, I feel like a lot of people don't realize they are actually outlining, and they feel like they have to write that. Really, when people think of that, they think of like bullet points for every little thing, and I've seen
Yeah.
writers do that, like all on social media. They'll talk about their outlining styles, and it'll be like, okay, let me plan every single chapter. That's fine, but I think there needs to be more discussion about alternate ways for people who don't
Yeah.
operate like that. Otherwise, they might think that's how they have to do it, and it isn't.
Yeah. Okay. I have asked all of like the questions that I wrote down that I was gonna ask,
Mhm.
and then like other ones that like popped up. Is there anything else you want to like talk about with your book?
I guess that just that I always wanted these characters to be as real as possible. And I tried to make everyone, no one was meant to, be a cliche or fit into a certain role. Um, I wanted it to be very clear that these people, although they're put in these positions where they have power, are actually just as human as anyone else. And that was one of my main goals. Everyone in that book has flaws, everyone has things they're good at. And I found that another reason I was inspired, so a lot of these heroines that I was seeing in books were um, just brave. They were kind. They were all those things that you think of when you think of heroines, but sometimes they didn't have any flaws at all.
Mhm.
And they were just always a constant. They were never making poor
Yeah.
decisions. They never had any insecurities. And that's extremely untrue, especially for teenagers. I
That's what I was
mean,
gonna say. I was
you're
like, teenagers are making so many bad decisions because you're a teenager and you're still learning how to
exactly, and
make
it's
decisions.
like it's if anything, you should be making mistakes. Like go see if
Yeah.
that's gonna turn out well. If it doesn't, then oh well. Like I'm like this is the most turbulent time in your life. And if you are somehow steady and like brave and courageous at every moment of your life and you're always kind and you're always that's just not how it actually is. And I was like, okay, let me write how it actually is, because I know because here
Yeah.
I am. And I've certainly, nothing's perfect right now. So I wanted that to be as clear as possible in
Yeah, and
my
it
book.
definitely comes across. That's probably a big reason why I loved the book so much because I love a good plot, but I'm very character driven with like what I write and
Yes.
read. So like good characters that are feel really real like that is
Yeah.
like what makes
Me
a book
too.
for
I'm that
me.
way too. Yeah.
Okay, to wrap up, where can people find you? Like online, social media, that kind of thing.
I have a TikTok account. It's Haley Writes, spelled HaleyWrites, on TikTok. And I do have that same handle for Instagram, but I mostly use TikTok, not Instagram. And you can find my book on Amazon.
I really love your TikTok. You're like always posting
Trying to be more
really
active.
good videos on there. I'm just like that like you're like posting really realistic stuff that I'm like, yes, this is me also as a writer.
No, yeah, yeah. It's really good if you're like a young writer or any kind of writer out there. I post a lot of writer content more than reader content, but it's a mix of both. So if you're looking for like some relatable and honest writing content, then that's kind of what I post on there.
A World of Shadows is currently available on Amazon, and thank you so much for talking to
Thank
me
you.
about your book. And thank you for everybody watching. Again, thank you so much for watching. Like I said, all of the information will be down in the description, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.